This time on Falmouth in Focus. Falmouth marks Indigenous Peoples Day. Events around town offer a chance to learn more about the Wampanoag Nation that predated the United States and stewarded the Cape's resources and ecology for thousands of years. We're listening to Native voices on Falmouth in Focus, and it starts right now. Hello and welcome to Falmouth in Focus. I'm Eileen Preston. The impetus for Indigenous Peoples Day emerged from a United Nations conference more than 40 years ago. President Joseph Biden formally recognized it in the United States with a proclamation in 2021. It's still not yet a federal holiday, although some cities and states recognize it. It coincides with Columbus Day, which is what Massachusetts continues to celebrate on a formal level. Falmouth marked this year's occasion with a number of cultural events and discussions around town. We're going to be offering up a sample of those as a preview of full-length events to be broadcast later on FCTV. And we'll start with an event held this month at Museums on the Green, which featured a celebration of Indigenous stories, song, and art. Some of these stories came from Tribal Chief Earl H. Mills, Sr., and Roxanne Mills Brown, Director of the Mashpee Wampanoag Tribe's Education Department.
Why did they come, the rich and famous, come here to Mashpee? First of all, we had the best food. It's true. Long before any of us were around, you could go down, and even when I was a young boy, you could push a boat into the bay, throw a old hand line over, and catch all the flatfish you wanted. Mm-hmm. You could have your eel spear or your eel net and catch all the eels you ever wanted. You could go down to the Mashpee River and catch all the trout and all the herring, until people began to discover this area and say, oh, I gotta go there. And then bring their poisonous things for their big fancy houses and stuff like that.
We're not an ethnic group because people fight us. Why do they get special treatment? Or they'll sue us, or they'll sue the state, or whomever, because it's not fair, it's not right. We are sovereign nations, and we have a political relationship with the federal government, and we have a different and equal status to the states, to the state of Massachusetts. And so growing up here, I didn't know that growing up. Federal recognition has brought a lot. But I think my peers in class, they didn't have any understanding. We would bring show and tell. We'd bring the war club my grandfather carved, or my dad's roach, or our moccasins in, and do that for show and tell. We maintained who we were because it's not a club, it's who we are. And it goes way down here. And when I say Masipiat, that means Mashpee. The bones of my ancestors are buried in Mashpee. It's that deep. By and large, we have a people that are really crawling out, standing up from a colonized mentality where everything was taken. And I'll tell you on this Indigenous Peoples Day, we didn't name this day tomorrow, but when I see other people coming from other countries and just being treated in a certain manner, it's offensive to me, because we are on our homelands and we get erased. Talk about erasure. There's so much, and that's a conversation to have with Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. When our parents register our children for school, there's about 500 codes they can choose from. Not Hispanic, Latino, Native, not Latino, Hispanic, Native, and Black. I mean, and we're Native, and so our parents don't understand. We're trying to figure out who in these school systems around us are our people. And so we've devised a method with Falmouth and Mashpee and our other districts to get parent consent to know that. I mean, we've had to do a runaround, go through the back door, but we're doing it. And we're going to have that discussion with Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. But our people, colonization, and it's not just our people that have come to these realizations. You see it all over the country. There are authors, there are speakers. They talk about generational trauma. Because when they attempt to erase you, it's really a form of genocide. No disrespect for those that actually lost their lives through that same process. But it is a genocide of a people, a culture. It is traumatic, and it gets into your DNA after so many generations. You raise your children in a certain way. They see themselves in a certain way, and you continue that cycle. All of this it's cross-country. It's not just our people, but we are working diligently. The 13 members of our tribal council, the different departments in our operations, the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, we have a tribal government, we have a tribal court, we have a district court, we have a Supreme Court. It just so happens that the chief judge is Robert Mills, my youngest brother. So the chief following my dad is my younger brother, Earl H. Mills, Jr., Chiefy. So I want you to know that we try to carry ourselves and pass down to our children how to carry themselves in the community and when they're outside of our community. It's a struggle. It's a struggle. The mental health is a struggle across the country, I know, amongst a lot of people. But we're trying to have them follow the red road, the right road, the good path, so that we can live in really both societies in a healthy and a good way. And really that's our goal. But we're a beautiful people. It brings tears because we have such beautiful people in our tribe. Our women are just outstanding. They're hard workers. They do their best. They just roll up their sleeves. No glitz and glamour. We're really, our ancestors are always with us. And I think that's really what I want you to know about our people.
Next, we head to Highfield Hall, up the hill. They invited Aquinnah Wampanoag teacher Brad Lopes to give a talk called My Family Whale. The title itself conveys a Wampanoag worldview of whales as relatives that should be mourned when they die and honored even as they are hunted for sustenance.
The whale harvest or drift whale processes are very important to us. Here you can see one of the early, I think this is an English depiction, of whaling, indigenous whaling. And what you're really seeing is, again, this is shallow shore whaling. You are kind of not going too far into the waterways. And oftentimes you are using harpoons that have very long kind of ropes and things tied to them. And you're really, again, only going after small whales, dolphins, porpoises, and things like that. But the process of a drift whale or a whale hunt is a communal event. It's a thing that pulls in everybody. There's ceremony, there's dance, like this stomp dance going on here. You can see the leader at the front with his rattle. He has a squash rattle. And again, you're leading a stomp dance, which is very important. And they're honoring that relative. They're honoring them through ceremony, through dance, through song. We're talking about singing them songs before actually engaging in the gifts that they've given us. You can use that blubber, you can use the bones, you can use the baleen, all of that has use. We do not let any of it go to waste. because in our worldview, whales truly are a part of our family. They truly are incredibly important relatives, and they hold a very important meaning to us. And so I think about them often. I think they hold our oldest songs as Wampanoag people, songs that we have long forgotten. And we are not the only coastal Indigenous people to have a close spiritual relationship with whales. When I was growing up in Maine, I spent a lot of time with Penobscot and Passamaquoddy citizens. And it was always mind-blowing to me. Not only do they have that same close relationship, they also had similar oral stories and traditions. And they also had a very similar word for whale. We say pitomp, they say boutomp. And when I think about those whales that get stranded on shore, I think about our family. So when we lose whales, when we lose any of them, it's like losing my grandmother. It's like losing my cousin. It's like losing my nephew. I feel their pain, and it sits with me. And this is true for many Wampanoag people. Recently, not too long ago, I was at a whale necropsy to actually conduct a ceremony for one of those relatives. And I worked with a great group that totally understood it, gave us space to do that, and engage with that. And I still remember looking at that cousin in their eye. It was a minke whale that unfortunately did not make it. And I can see the humanity in their eyes. I can see their soul, their spirit, everything in their eyes. And it really broke my heart. So again, we have this cultural kinship with what we call non-human relatives or more than human relatives. These are animals, plants, fungi, all of these different relatives that occupy our home with us. And this really extends back to time immemorial. And what we mean by that is we've really been here since before time was truly remembered in the way that we think about it today. And this relationship, as I've already shared, is really truly enshrined in our epistemology and our spirituality. And recently I came across a phrase that was coined by Sherry Mitchell, who's Passamaquoddy, I believe. And Sherry used the phrase episticide, which is the combination of the word genocide and epistemology. And what she was talking about is how our knowledge systems were directly targeted and attacked through the process of colonization. Our folks, whether it was the 1700s in missionary settings, the 1800s during the Indian boarding school era, were oftentimes not allowed to really be sitting with that knowledge. That knowledge was intentionally targeted and attacked oftentimes. And so this is something for us to kind of grapple with today.
And just a reminder, FCTV will be broadcasting the full-length version of the Museums on the Green and Highfield events, so check fctv.org for airtimes. We'll continue now on the theme of nature and the reverent relationship between it and the indigenous tribes that predated European settlers. On previous programs, we've updated you on the Upper Coonamessett River Restoration Project. The removal of dams and cranberry bog sand have allowed native plants to flourish and permitted the return of herring, trout, and eel, all foods of Indigenous cultural relevance. Now the 300 Committee has installed signage to teach trail walkers about holistic Wampanoag traditions of stewardship.
We've worked with colleagues on the Wampanoag tribe and finished 4 new interpretive signs honoring the Wampanoag tribe. The Mashpee Wampanoags have lived on these lands for many thousands of years, and they recognize that we're all part of nature. And so the signs we have are, the one here at the overlook is the history of the Wampanoag, and then we'll have 3 in the recently finished Upper River part. One is about rights of nature, and then the other 2 signs we have in the Upper River are uses of animals products and plant products. The Wampanoag recognize that, well, as this sign says, as David Whedon says, what you consider resources, we consider gifts from God.
It's amazing, when you go out with our chief, he'll talk about some of the species that are here, and so many of them are culturally significant to us. Some of them are edible, some of them are medicinal. You've got cordage plants out here, meaning, you can make baskets or what have you. And none of that was here prior to this rehab. So this is a perfect example of of what a natural habitat would look like. And then, of course, you've got the herring run that goes through it as well. Most folks in our community, we look at our water, our air, the animals as relatives. And so, as you would, if you had someone in your family who was not well, who was ailing, who was sick, you would try to do anything you could to make that person feel better, to get them into a better place. I'll be honest with you, I grew up on this bog. Although it looked entirely different, I did spend a lot of time in this area. So to be back here and to be able to enjoy this and just see all these beautiful plants and nature as it should be, it just makes me feel whole. I love it.
Around this time of year, acorns are dropping from oak trees. For many people, they can be an annoyance, dinging car hoods and getting caught in lawnmowers. For many Indigenous peoples, including the Wampanoag, acorns and other tree nuts have historically been an important staple food in a seasonal diet. That's the subject of a new book from WCAI food reporter Elspeth Hay, entitled Feed Us with Trees. Falmouth in Focus producer Kurt Asian caught up with her for a brief conversation.
Elspeth Hay, this book that you have written, Feed Us with Trees, what struck me was that it is a very well researched and also a very personally told kind of meditation on the stories that we tell ourselves about food, particularly culturally. And it's in that kind of idiom with relation to Indigenous Peoples Days events here in town that I'd like to talk to you about this. Just tell me a little bit about the journey you went on to discover that acorns were even edible and where that kind of began to lead you.
Yeah, I had no idea that we could eat acorns until a few years ago. A friend sent me a TEDx talk by a woman named Marcy Mayer, who's in Greece. And she said that not only are acorns edible, but they're one of our oldest human foods and a superfood. And that really shocked me and led me on this journey of questioning the stories that we tell about agriculture and sort of the line between the human world and the natural world and what is and isn't food.
Yeah, and to us, to many of the readers, it's a discovery that acorns are food that are suitable for humans. For the indigenous people of the Northeast here on Cape Cod and elsewhere, it is no discovery. It is a millennia old practice. And that's where we get into sort of these historical and cultural stories that we tell ourselves about the way we raise food and the way we kind of congratulate ourselves for having come up with annual grain and corn agriculture and the way we are dismissive of other people's systems for raising food. I mean, just contextualize acorns, nuts, chestnuts in terms of what you learned about indigenous diets. I mean, they've been around forever and they're very deliberately cultivated, right?
Yeah, in most places in the Northern Hemisphere, these keystone nut trees, so not just oaks, but also chestnuts, hazelnuts, other really important nut trees that are not only food, but incredibly important to support a number of other species, wildlife species, plant species, fungal species. They've been a really central part of our food systems in a huge variety of places across the Northern Hemisphere for thousands of years. And it turns out that it's really only recently, in sort of the past few hundred years of settler colonialism, that our connection to these trees and these foods has been severed, and our stories around what is and isn't food have really shifted.
Yes, and I've been hearing at all of these various events that we've been covering for this episode of Falmouth in Focus, Indigenous people talk about a basic relationship with nature, which is a partnership, a kindred or family relationship. And those same trees that provide all the nuts and the acorns, they also provide the material for the boats, which is then used to go whaling and so forth and so on. I heard a woman describe the ocean as a mother, and an entirely different framing of nature and nature's provenance than sort of the extractive model, which relies on dominion. We're at the top, we own it. Uh, and that has been a model we have, again, I say we, that settler colonial derived peoples have imposed on indigenous peoples. And you go into that in the book.
Yeah, one of the things that struck me the most as I learned more about acorns as a food crop is that in a lot of places in North America, indigenous people have traditionally burned prescribed fires, cultural fires, to keep oak woodlands open and productive. And it's a really different relationship and a really different way of thinking about our role on the landscape. So, in a lot of our Western settler stories, especially today, humans are seen as mostly a negative force on the landscape. And, this is for good reason. We're doing a lot of extractive work on the land right now. But our historic relationship in most places has actually been to be a keystone species, just like the trees, a really important partner in creating habitat. And so fire and oak trees for me have ended up being this teacher to learn about a different way of relating to our landscape. There have been ongoing, intentional, and really long-term relationships that have made these landscapes abundant with food in the exact same ways that we make farms abundant with food. The only difference is which crops you're choosing to grow and how, what tools you're using to cultivate them. But the intentions and the relationship and the work is really the same.
And so, going back to the title of the book, Feed Us with Trees, this is an exhortation. This is written in the imperative. You're calling on somebody or society as a whole to feed us with trees. Is that a statement of optimism? Do you believe that evolution and change, or perhaps recultivating some of these lost or forgotten indigenous ways, are possible?
I think it's not just possible. I think it's going to happen whether we, transition in a gradual, comfortable way, which we could choose to do sooner, or we wait a long time and sort of get forced into it. I think that change is coming, and it's up to us to choose how we want to respond.
Well, Elspeth Hay, author of Feed Us with Trees, Nuts and the Future of Food. I really appreciate the chance to talk to you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that is going to wrap up our show for the moment. I'm Eileen Preston. We're going to finish the show with scenes from a folk singer descended from Alaska's indigenous Tlingit tribe. Kim Moberg led the audience in a sing-along of The Fire Still Burns. Until next time, we'll see you around town.
The seventh flame is nigh, he what has been lost. When the seventh flame is nigh, pay attention to the cost. Awake in the wisdom as bitter rivers flow. Choose the path to unify and turn to what it is. Last time at the fire. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you for sending your